Hello, everybody, and welcome to Momavation TV. My name is Leah Segedy, also known as Bookie Boo on Twitter. We've got Rick Smith with us here tonight, and he's going to talk all about toxins with his new book, Toxin Toxout. And I'm pretty excited to have him on the show. And I just also wanted to say before the show started and we get too deep into it, there's two things I wanted to announce. Do you notice somebody? You might not recognize her because she has dyed her hair a different color, but if you look, and you see that blonde who used to be a redhead? I cried a little when I saw that it was blonde, but it actually looks really, really cute on her, so I'm not going to haze her too much for it. Elizabeth. Elizabeth is with us, and of course, if you recognize her, she was a former Momavation mom, and she is now the new producer for our show. So today's her first official day, so yay, Elizabeth. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for putting up with me, because really it is a matter of putting up with me, and how much can you handle? How much can you handle?
I'm a redheaded heart, so we're good.
She's a redheaded heart. She's like, I'm used to crazy. I'm used to crazy. I've got it everywhere. Hey, I am crazy. Well, I am crazy, but crazy in a good way and a little intense. And so I'm really excited to have you on board. And we love, 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 love Lydia. Lydia's not mad at us. Lydia's not upset. Lydia's still around. Lydia just got a basically full-time job, and we overwhelmed her a little bit too much for the job and us and everything else. So we were sad to see her go, but Elizabeth is taking over the reins, and she's got some big shoes to fill. Yes. The other thing I wanted to remind you guys tonight is on Wednesday, I'm helping produce a film documentary called A New Resistance with Ed Brown. Ed Brown was also the producer of Unacceptable Levels. If you guys remember that, we just had a Twitter party for them. And we're going to have a Facebook party on Wednesday with Earth Mama Angel Baby as the sponsor. And Facebook party, and we're talking all about glyphosate. And so come for fun, come for education, come to win prizes, come just to share. So we're going to be doing it. So, and I know it's been a while since we've done a Facebook party, but if you remember, we create those really cool images. And you can either chime in on the Facebook wall, or you can share them and chime in on your own wall. And so you can do it however you want. But we just ask that you come. And don't forget, this party is going to be during the day. So it's going to be 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific Standard Time, which will be noon on the East Coast time. I had to do the numbers. Did you see how the wheels were turning? I just took a second. I was actually really good at algebra in high school, believe it or not. Really, really good. I sucked at a lot of other things, but I was really good at algebra. So the math sometimes is really quick and sometimes it's not so quick. That wasn't so bad. Okay, so we've got that coming on Wednesday, and then the following week, I haven't announced it yet, so I'm going to announce it here. We're going to be doing a special party on water with EWS Water. And that's going to be another Twitter party. So we got a lot of stuff going on. And we opened up the wait list for ShipCon tickets. So if you guys are still interested in going to ShipCon, we do have the wait list open. And I'm going through the wait list and going, bloop, you can come. Bloop, you can come. Bloop, you can come. So go sign up. And you may just get yourself a ticket. But the one thing you want to think is pay attention to your emails, because I think when we allow people to get the ticket and we release them, they don't always see it. I think it goes to junk mail. So pay attention to what's going on. And a couple of people got upset because they got a ticket and then they lost it because it has a time on it. And then I'm like, sorry, we kind of went on to the next person. So pay attention. Pay attention. Okay, so this show is going to be about toxins, and we've got the wonderful Rick Smith here calling us live. I don't know if we could say calling that, but coming to us live from Toronto in Canada. Yes. Canada, eh? We got a Canadian. We love Canadians on Momavation. We think they're so cool. What they are especially is nice, and they say sorry all the time. And so because I'm always making an ass of myself and they're always apologizing for me, I think it's like a super cool relationship. Really super cool.
Does that means I need to say sorry a lot. Is that right?
Well, you don't have to, but when you're around me, people end up doing it a lot. I don't know why.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I want Rick, he's going to introduce him a little bit. I'm going to set him up. And Rick, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, about your background, and what makes you so amazing with the topic of toxins?
My co-author Bruce Laurie and I have just written a book called Toxin Toxout, How to Get Harmful Chemicals Out of Our Bodies and Our World. And this follows our first book called Slow Death by Rubber Duck.
Yeah, I remember Rubber Ducky.
Yeah, that came out a few years ago.
I remember the rubber ducky. That was brilliant with the little rubber ducky.
Yeah, that caused a stir around the world. So Bruce and I have been working in this area of toxic chemicals for many years, and we had this idea a few years ago to try to zero in, to try to focus on solutions. We all get overwhelmed by this all these crazy toxic chemicals we're surrounded with every day, all of these various ways that our health is threatened. But what we've tried to do with these two books is really create something positive, solutions oriented, and a little bit fun. So we tell this story of toxic chemicals through experimenting on ourselves. So we kind of turn ourselves into giant human guinea pigs.
No! Oh my God!
And show the surprising ways that our toxic chemical levels change throughout the day in response to what we're doing. And then that leads us to talk about the solutions to reducing our levels over the longer term. So that's me.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. So I got a couple of questions for you. First of all, okay, so you've already kind of told me how this book is a little different than what the Rubber Ducky book is about, because you have now turned yourself into a guinea pig. How does it feel to be a guinea pig, by the way?
It's fine because one way that we look at it, so the way we explain it, the way I've explained it to my wife, who's a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I would be too.
is we actually in both books we do this experimentation on ourselves, and actually on a couple of intrepid volunteers, but we actually don't do anything wild and crazy. I mean, we don't take a bath in Teflon. We don't lather up in gallons of BPA. What we do is we undertake activities that millions of Americans would do every day. And we just carefully measure levels of certain toxic chemicals in our bodies before, during, and after doing these activities. So, in the first book, for instance, we look at organic food, and we ask the question: does eating organic food measurably lower pesticide levels in the body? You were just talking about glyphosate a minute ago. Mm-hmm. And so, all we did in that experiment, I mean, it's not very interesting results. Nobody's ever done it before, but not death-defying. All we do in that experiment is we measure pesticide levels in our kid volunteers before, during, and after eating organic food, and we look at the results. So I feel okay being a human guinea pig because I'm just doing stuff that people do every day.
Okay, that makes sense. I was hoping you weren't like laying around in a vat of like asbestos or anything like that, swimming.
No.
That would not be good. Not be good. Okay, so we're talking pesticides, we're talking personal care products, we're talking cleaning products. What else are we talking?
So what we tried to do in Toxin Toxout is think about the few ways that these toxic chemicals can get into our bodies. And if you think about it, this can only happen in a handful of ways: through what we eat and drink, through what we apply to our bodies, a smear on our skin, through what we breathe, and that's really the kind of the framework of the book. So so when it comes to what we eat, we look at the effect of organic food, and we ask the question. Look, I mean, so many of us shop for organic food now. In many cases, we pay a little bit more for it. Is it worth it? Does eating organic food measurably lower pesticide levels in our bodies or not? Or is it just something that we do that's kind of good for the environment, but not measurably better for us as individuals? So we do that experiment with organic food. We look at the chemicals, the toxic chemicals that we breathe in every day, without even thinking about it. We look at the new car smell. We're all raised.
Or the perfume section at Nordstrom's.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
dear.
I mean, we're all familiar with these smells. We grow up with them. We've all been trained to love the new car smell. I mean, I love the new car smell. I mean, who doesn't? So we ask the question: are these chemical odors that we're surrounded with every day, are they potent enough to actually result in a measurable increase in toxic chemical levels in the body. And so we do an experiment in the book where I sit in a new car for a day, breathing in the new car smell, and then test my levels of these various chemicals before and after. We look
So
at
how significant was something like that?
through the roof. So my body levels of formaldehyde, benzene, toluene, a lot of these solvents and toxic chemicals, very common in plastics and glues and things like this. All of these levels went through the roof as I sat there in the car, just breathing in normally.
Did you get a little high when you were in there? Because you're not used to it. I found, well, at least for me, when I put myself in situations like that, if I do, I start to get a little lightheaded and silly.
Yeah.
I think it's because you're not used to it anymore.
A little bit, but we as North Americans, we do a hell of a lot of driving, right? So,
right.
A lot of people driving across California, driving across Ontario, where I live. I mean, you'd be in the car for hours on end. So, again, so that experiment really just mimicked what people would do every day anyway.
Wow.
But the punchline there being that these chemicals do get readily absorbed by the body. The good news being, though, that once you remove yourself from that situation and once you start being a bit more of a careful consumer, you can reduce those levels very quickly.
Very quickly. So how quickly are we talking about?
Within a matter of hours. So, the good news about a lot of these chemicals that we write about in the book Toxin Toxout, the good news about a lot of these kind of newer pollutants in our lives, BPA, phthalates in personal care products, these so-called volatile organic compounds, VOCs, in paints and carpet underlay and these things that we buy in our homes. The good news is that a lot of these chemicals are actually quite effectively flushed from our bodies if you can reduce further exposure. So one of the things that we do in the book is we kind of delve into the whole weird world of detox therapies, and we ask the question, is there any such thing as a detox therapy that actually works? I mean, do these dozens and dozens of specialty detox therapies that you can see advertised these days, do any of them actually work? And we actually experiment with a lot of those in the book.
Ooh, and do any of them work?
A lot of them probably don't do any harm, but very few of them would be as effective as some simpler things that people could do much more easily. So the first and most important thing you need to do to get toxic chemicals out of your body is be a more careful consumer and reduce further exposure. So from our organic food experiment, very clear that eating just a little bit more of organic food can dramatically lower levels of cancer-causing pesticides in your body very quickly, like within a matter of hours.
So is it something like 90% or 80%?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really that high.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you about that experiment for 1 second, just to show how efficient our bodies are at getting rid of these chemicals. In that experiment, we took 9 kids, just friends of ours who volunteered. It was a 12-day experiment. And so in the first 4 days, the kids ate non-organic food, so just what they would normally eat.
Right.
And we measured levels of pesticides in their pee every morning. In the middle 4 days, they ate organic food, and we measured levels of pesticides in their bodies every morning in their urine. And then in the last 4 days, they went back on the non-organic food, and we continued to measure those pesticide levels in their bodies. And the effect could not have been more dramatic and rapid. So as soon as they started eating the organic food, levels of those pesticides came down in their bodies within a matter of hours. And then as soon as they went off the organic food, those pesticide levels came right back up again within a matter of hours. So whether it's pesticides or whether it's BPA or whether it's phthalates in a lot of personal care products, the first and most important thing you can do to detox is to switch up the brands that you're buying and buy less toxic or non-toxic brands.
So let me play devil's advocate with you just for a second. And
Yeah.
so, someone like, my husband's a believer now, but like 2-3 years ago, he would have been, I always saw him rolling his eyes, and he would say to me, boy, I like organic because I get to eat more bugs. You know what I mean? Like he would say those kind of things to me. I just had to be really, sweet about it. Of course, do things like give him more sex when he eat organic food. I had to be creative, and that worked really well in our house. But anyways, so the devil's advocate question I have for you is, so if it comes out of your system so quickly, why are we bothering if it's just going to get flushed out anyways? Answer me that.
Well, the quick answer is that because we're constantly re-exposing, even though these chemicals are pretty easily flushed from our systems, we're constantly re-exposing ourselves on a minute-by-minute basis throughout the day. So the U.S. Center for Disease Control does extensive testing of Americans every year. Looks at blood and urine levels of all these toxic chemicals in thousands of Americans every year. And from that we know that, just taking BPA as an example, that 95% of Americans have relatively high, relatively constant levels of BPA in their bodies all the time. Even though BPA can be very, very easily flushed from the human body, the average lifespan of a BPA molecule in the human body is a few hours. So what's happening is that we're constantly absorbing these chemicals, constantly flushing them out, but maintaining a relatively high level of these chemicals all the time. And so, with the mounting scientific evidence linking all these chemicals to, increased rates of breast cancer, increased rates of prostate cancer, a lot of childhood diseases like asthma and ADHD, anything we can do to lower levels of these chemicals in the body is really worth it.
So, and here's another thing. So if we're finding so much BPA in our system and we're finding so much like, pesticides, things like atrazine, those are classified obesogens. Do we think, or do you have an opinion on maybe the obesity epidemic tied to some of these toxic chemicals?
Oh, there's very clear evidence now linking things like the Teflon family of chemicals to increased rates of obesity. So, it might seem weird that we're talking about this group of chemicals, pesticides, BPA, phthalates, and we're talking about them being related to breast cancer and prostate cancer, and we're also talking about them being related to increased rates of obesity. That might seem like a broad range of human ailments to be linking these things to, but the reason for that is that all these chemicals we're talking about are hormone disrupting chemicals. So all these chemicals mimic estrogen, or in some cases testosterone, in the human body, and then they trigger all of the complicated biological processes that estrogen triggers. And of course, hormones are the kind of traffic cops of the human body. They're the stoplights of the human body. They turn all sorts of biological processes on and off. So there's no question that increased rates of type 2 diabetes, obesity are linked to a lot of these chemicals.
And that's just fascinating because, when we have runaway obesity in the United States, and they don't even look into things like this, and yet they keep telling us to, what do they keep telling us to do? Calories in, calories out, right? Isn't that, Elizabeth? Go ahead and drink a can of Pepsi and make sure you run 4 miles after that to burn it off. And then, but no, don't look at into any of these other things that, have kind of been proven to make you gain weight. No, we couldn't do something like that. Because, that would just kind of solve the problem there, And it's kind of interesting how, how the media treats this and how our governments treat this, and, how just every day. I don't think people see this connection yet, and I think it's a real serious one. Who's talking about this obesogen connection at ShiftCon is Dr. Green. I don't know if you don't know Dr. Green. He's a pediatrician.
Yeah, very well. No, very well. We've spoken together at events. He's a great guy. Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, these are not things that we're making up. These are not, figments of our imagination. There is now a mountain of scientific evidence, of medical evidence, linking these hormone-disrupting chemicals to all these human diseases. And in some cases, in the case of chemicals like BPA, scientists have known that BPA is hormone disrupting for almost 100 years. This is not new information.
Wow.
What happened in the 60s and 70s is that our laws are so flawed or so lax that some guy in a lab figured out how to make a really cool plastic out of BPA, and then all of a sudden, baby bottles throughout the nation were made with this known hormone disrupting chemical. So we have crummy laws in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, though they're getting a little bit better in Europe,
right.
protecting consumers from poisonous, defective products. That's really what we're talking about.
You guys have better laws in Canada, don't you, than the U.S.?
No, not really, no. We share, in a very few cases, the Canadian government has got out ahead on chemicals like BPA, on triclosan. One of the chemicals we talk about in the book is this weird antibacterial chemical, triclosan, that you increasingly find in hand sanitizers and dish soaps and things like that. Canada's a little bit ahead on a couple of chemicals, but by and large, we're in lockstep with the United States.
Wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And it just blows my mind. I mean, I didn't start learning about this until about 2 years ago. Actually, I would say 2 years ago, probably to the day, because when I got into this is when we were trying to pass labeling in California, labeling GMOs. And of course, I live in California, and I used to work for the government, for the California State Assembly. I used to do fundraising for elected officials. I was like in the system. And so, as a blogger now, that was like my old life. And then I looked and I'm like, whoa, we're labeling GMOs? What the heck's a GMO? Everyone's coming to me for health and fitness, and I'm the mom that lost 100 pounds. So I had to do my homework, and what I found really bothered me. And what's bothering me even more today is not so much the technology of GMOs that bothers me as much as the glyphosate. And I'm learning so much about that. And I'm just, because they spray that on everything. It's like 200 crops that they're spraying glyphosate on. And they're spraying it on wheat right before they harvest it. They're spraying it on everything. And like they're upping the levels. And it's making me crazy. And I really think that stuff needs to be banned. Banned.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, what's happening in the States at the moment is that things are so stalled in Congress. The U.S. U.S. laws, consumer protection laws and pollution laws that are supposed to protect us from these chemicals have been ineffective for decades. And so what we're seeing in the States, thankfully, is some movement at a state level. So, as you mentioned, California has got out ahead on a lot of these issues, on BPA and other things. We see movement on
flame retardants.
On flame retardants. We see movement on personal care products, even though the federal law that's supposed to, if there's one family of products that is terribly regulated, that the government doesn't oversee, and that is full of toxic chemicals, it's personal care products. It's just unbelievable. I mean, the laws related to cosmetics haven't been changed in decades, and most major brand name cosmetics are full of these toxic chemicals. Thankfully, we now see movement on some of this at a state level.
Yeah, the fire retardants I think are kind of like in court right now, because what they did was they passed a law so that furniture companies didn't have to put it into the furniture anymore, and then they got sued. So right now I don't know what's actually happening to it, but it was a big deal. It's like the firemen are against it, the doctors are against it, the scientists were against it. The only people that were for it were the chemical companies that were putting the chemical in the fire. But they had so much power that they were able to actually stop it and stop the will of the people from happening. And there was this one, it was a protest. It was actually a silent protest, but it was really effective. And it was all these firemen. They put the boots of all of the firemen that died from, symptoms of toxic chemicals from the fire retardants when they were breathing it in, put all of their boots up on the Capitol steps for everyone to look at, to see how many firemen were breathing that in and dying from it. And that was really powerful to me. I don't know if everybody saw that, but I definitely took notice. A lot of people in Sacramento took notice. And it's, you don't mess with our firemen. So we love our firemen. You don't mess around with our firemen.
No, that's right. I mean, the chemical industry, the guys that make these crazy flame retardants that until recently were put into every sofa in the nation, were put into every piece of carpet underlay in the nation, every child car seat in the nation was full of this stuff, right? The chemical companies that make these chemicals have, until very recently, been totally unsupervised by the federal government. And they've come up with all these crazy toxic chemicals that have demonstrable health effects that are easily absorbed into the human body. And there's really been no consequence for these companies. So, in the case of flame retardants, this is, getting this approach that we've tried to use in our two books, Slow Death by Rubber Duck and Toxin Toxout. The approach we've tried to use in the book is directly measuring toxic chemical levels in the human body and trying to figure out what dramatically lowers levels of these chemicals in the body and what doesn't. And there was a recent study on flame retardant levels in Californians that kind of used the same approach. Until very recently, as you mentioned, California had very crummy standards for flame retardants. And as a consequence, Californians had far higher levels of flame retardants in their bodies than people living in neighboring states. Because every product you bought in California, every sofa, every kid car seat, every piece of carpeting,
and we have to have everything new here,
was jacked up with these flame retardants in a way that Washington residents, Oregon residents, Idaho residents didn't have to deal with. So there was this very famous study that came out a couple of years ago comparing flame retardant levels in the bloodstreams of Californians versus other Americans. Californians were far more polluted. So that was one reason that the California Assembly, to its credit, acted decisively.
Well, if I knew anything, and I'm only been in the green movement for about 2 years, but from studying the Middle America tipping point women, which is what primarily my audience was before I did this, there were 2 things that women cared about. There were 2 things that you could get them to like, or moms, I would say moms. 2 things. And it's hard for people to guess because you would think that cancer would be one of them or their kids dying of cancer would be one of them. That's not something that they generally tend to open up about because, it's too scary for them to think about.
Right.
The 2 things are, 1, is it make my ass fat? That's number 1. I'm not joking. Everybody cares about that, pretty much, unless they're super tiny. And number 2, is it going to make my kids stupid? Those are the 2 things that moms, and it doesn't matter who they are, what part of the aisle they are, where they live, are they rich or they poor, it doesn't matter where they come from. Those 2 things, a mom, you can get her attention, absolutely, with those 2 things. And the interesting things about these toxins is they do both of those things. They make you fat and they make our children stupid. I mean, not stupid, but, the IQ rates go down. The attention span goes down. They can't everybody wants their children to do well in school, want them to do well in life, go to college, and it does those 2 things. And I feel like as a movement, we need to pull away from the cancer talk and focus in more on these, even though they're not life-threatening. They're not necessarily, but they're very much attention grabbing because they're secondary needs, and one of the things I remember this from college. So I went to USC and we did a lot, and when I got my master's degree, most of it was persuasive communication. What do people really, really care about? And when you're trying to communicate something with health recommendations and stuff like that, what kind of things actually work? Well, okay, so we did a lot of studies on, dental hygiene, right? Which is the craziest thing to be thinking of. And, in a book, it's like it's so boring, but it was so interesting what happened. So when people are shown, and this is Americans they were studying, so I don't know if Europeans are the same. I don't know if Canadians are the same, but definitely Americans. We're our own monsters, by the way. We're very different than everyone else. So when you show an American that picture of the teeth like all gnarled out and like decaying and the teeth falling out and foam and all that stuff, it's not very effective at all. People just look at it and just look away. La 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 la, I can't hear you. No, no, no. What actually worked better is the message that was a little bit dangerous but gave you information. You know what I'm saying? So not quite so bad, but bad enough that it kind of made them look and go. So what I like about how you're addressing this right now, Rick, is you're saying the sky is falling, but don't worry. You can solve it. Do you know what I'm saying? In a matter of a couple of hours or days, you have control of your own life. You can change this right now, like within a few hours or a couple of days. I mean, you can do something right now to fix this problem. And I love that. I love that because I think, you know, a lot of times when we do hear these messages, the sky is falling, but there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's just like it's everywhere. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Can I just, and then people are just so incredibly tuned out. And they have to be tuned out here because I think there's so much competing stuff going at them. And I think our brains in this digital age, we are on sensory overload. And I would call it, what is it? Sensory integration disorder. I think we all are walking around with sensory integration disorder, kind of like someone with Asperger's, where, you know, you kind of can't deal, but the only time you can get something is when it's like in your face. And so that's when, you know, the news is like somebody died, you know, news at 11. Americans are also really interesting because, you know, we don't pay attention until the sky is falling in a sense. And then half of us are paying attention. The other half are just like putting your head in the sand, you know, like hiding a little bit. So yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah. But my question to you is, because you're an author and you are writing books about something that's so incredibly important, but it is something that not everyone's paying attention to. What was your reaction to Rubber Ducky, and what's the reaction right now you're finding to this new book that you've just written?
Well, you know, that's a great question. Rubber Duck came out Slow Death by Rubber Duck came out in 2009. And it did really well all over the world. So we traveled, you know, across the United States, across Europe, Australia, talking about these issues. You know, this issue of toxic chemicals in everyday products, and quite often we'd be talking to big audiences, and we'd say, okay, who has heard of the chemical BPA? There'd be kind of silence. A couple of people would blink at us. And nobody had heard of what we were talking about. You know, phthalates in personal care products, these hormone-disrupting chemicals in personal care products linked to breast cancer. Pesticides in food. I mean, very few people we talked to 5 years ago had thought about these issues. Well, our new book, Toxin Toxout, came out a couple of months ago, and again, we've been talking to audiences about this. And certainly when it comes to moms, certainly when it comes to young parents, everybody has heard now about BPA. In plastics. Everybody, or a very significant number of people have heard about phthalates in personal care products. In fact, when I was watching the Grammys a few months ago, you know, I was really interested that one of the big shampoo companies bought up like $1 billion worth of advertising space on the Grammys to advertise their new brand of no parabens, no phthalates shampoo. You know, which says to me,
that's fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much a TV spot during the Grammys cost, but it must be a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And this company was, you know, I'm sure they tested their ad thoroughly, and they were flashing up the words parabens, phthalates on the screen, which says to me that some critical number of Americans have heard about these things and are willing to do something about it. I love the fact you're.
That was I know. Do you want to say hi? You could just come say hi. I know. Yeah. He's wearing his little Gil Grunt outfit. I don't know if you know what they are.
I need to take it off.
You can take it off. Do you know what a paraben is? No. Do you know what a phthalate is?
No.
Do you know what a pesticide is?
Yes.
What's a pesticide?
So fill it up. Actually, my show's going down.
I think he knows. He's like, I'm not gonna say.
That's right.
It's like a big grown-up thing.
Come
Oh,
on,
okay.
Mom. Yeah, that's
He's
it.
showing you my 1 pound of fat thing that I have. This is a pound of fat. He's found my little. I'm sure
Nice.
this is made of. I have no idea what this is made of. It's probably made. What do you think this is made of?
It's hard to tell from this distance. Yeah.
It's very squishy.
It's disgusting.
It's kind of disgusting. But I think it is made of some kind of industrial chemical that we probably don't want to be touching.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I give Mommy a kiss?
Hello.
I love you very much. I don't
Mom,
get it.
look at this.
What? What do you want me to
I
look
appear
at?
on the screen on.
You want to see yourself on the screen?
I
real quick?
appear on the screen on this side.
Yes, and you come on the other side. See, you're actually over here, and it comes out on that side. Yes.
How did that happen?
Very confusing.
It's just backwards
Yeah.
with TV. TV's just backwards. That's all. Can you say hi, Rick Smith, and say hi, Elizabeth,
Emily,
and hi, everybody.
Hi.
And that's my little monkey in the middle. Okay, you gotta go. You gotta go. I know. That's what Yaya made you.
my son's very close to that age, or one of my sons is very close to that age.
This is one of mine. So this is my monkey in the middle. That's what I call him. His Yaya made that for him.
I
It's very
love it.
cute. His little penguin. He's 5. His older brother is 8, and then the baby is 2 years old. And they're all differing shades of red. And this one got the blondest of all 3. But the
Yeah.
rest of them got fire red. Can you close my
Right.
door, please? Appreciate it. Anyways, so I mean, on my show that just randomly happens. You know, the kids walk in. Hopefully, they don't say something that's too crazy and embarrassing. Although over the years, you know, we've done this show. I think we've been doing this show for 5 years now, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I've been quite. The interesting things have happened when the kids have come in here. That's for sure.
Kids always speak the truth, you know.
They do.
They have no filters, so they just blurt out the truth when it's inopportune moments.
I don't know if you have a filter either, Leah. You speak the truth.
I have a little filter. I do. I have a little filter. I do actually have one. But my filter is I don't really care half the time. That's my filter. And then the truth speaking, yeah. I mean, I am willing to say things that other people are a little afraid to say, and that's kind of my MO. But do you know what some of my friends say about me is that I have balls the size of Texas, which if I actually did have balls the size of Texas, it would be hard to walk, I think. So I think that they don't mean that literally. But anyways, I'm going to take a comment here real quick. You know, okay. So Elizabeth says the irony: Teflon and non-stick were made to eliminate butter and oil for healthy cooking, but the obesogens are making you fat. So that was from Elizabeth, and I think that is actually really insightful, dear. I mean, seriously, Teflon was made for that purpose. It was made for easy cleaning and stuff like that. Easy cleaning and less butter. And I remember butter being the devil. Butter was like the devil of all devils, and now we know grass-fed organic butter is just fine. It's just fine. It's not going to hurt you. Have some butter. And if you don't want butter, you know, there's other things you can do, but dear Lord, most of the margarines out there are not helpful at all. What were you going to say, Rick?
Well, I was just going to say there's one of the chapters in our first book, Slow Death by Rubber Duck, talks about Teflons a lot. And there's actually this ongoing, unwitting experiment going on in West Virginia with Teflon. Parkersburg, West Virginia is literally the town that Teflon built. The big DuPont plant is there that manufactures a lot of the chemicals in Teflon. And there's been this ongoing slow leak of Teflon chemicals into the groundwater of that town.
Oh, you're talking about the Elk River, right? Where 300,000 people lost their water because it smelled like licorice. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, don't think so. This is the 65,000 people in Parkersburg, West Virginia, that have this Teflon chemical in their groundwater. And there's been this ongoing huge scientific investigation into the links between Teflon and different human diseases. And so that's where a lot of the evidence on Teflon is coming out of. This town where virtually everybody in town has been exposed to that chemical and is suffering as a result.
So what's happening to them exactly?
So there's all sorts of evidence that linking Teflon chemicals to obesity, to liver problems, to a whole range of diseases in that area. So, extrapolating from that, Elizabeth is right. I mean, these nonstick chemicals are incredibly common in our daily life. We use them in all sorts of packaging. We use them on nonstick chemicals and stain repellent chemicals on furniture are the same family of chemicals, and so we're being exposed to these chemicals on a very regular basis.
So it's in your carpet, it's in your furniture, it's on pretty
That's
much everything that you're touching. So okay, so do they have so it's the non-stick carpet. So you just avoid the non-stick carpet essentially, or do you need to even go further than that?
I avoid in my house, and it's actually not that hard to do. We try to avoid non-stick and stain repellent coated products, right? So in the kitchen, rather than using a Teflon frying pan, we use cast iron, we use stainless steel, we use ceramic cookware. There's this whole new generation of really great snap lid, to save leftovers.
Yeah.
We use those glass snap lid containers you can buy in a lot of places these days.
And then back in the days, use what Grandma used like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Except for the obnoxious detergents in the bathroom.
Oh.
I don't know what your grandmother was like. My grandmother used to use a ton of obnoxious detergents. She was sort of like Howard Hughes.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I'm sure she did a lot of really obnoxious things too with other things. But I do remember the cooking, and they always had those big cast iron skillets, and they had those glass or ceramic things, And actually, I forced my mom to keep them because they were so. I mean, I had such an emotional attachment to them, So we kept a lot of them, and I get to bust them out now, So that makes me happy, but. It freaks me out. So I know that there are companies that are providing eco-friendly carpet, that are providing eco-friendly mattresses. We do work with a couple of these companies like Naturepedic for mattresses. Oh, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you. What about furniture like sofas and mattresses? So did you do an experiment with those?
I didn't do an experiment with those, but because one of the things we try to do with our experiments is do something that would have a quick effect, and we couldn't figure out an experiment with those products that we'd see a quick effect. But there's lots of scientific evidence now that products like pillows are a significant contributor of flame retardants, for instance, in our daily lives.
Right.
So a lot of us are still using the pillows that we had when we were teenagers, and the foam is kind of falling apart, and those are exactly the kinds of products that you should look around your house. It's not that expensive to replace a pillow, and most of the foam that's produced today is going to be a lot less toxic than that old foam that you bought 10, 20 years ago.
Is there a part of this where when it gets older it's not as harmful, or is it just always consistently harmful?
As an environment, it's interesting you ask that. As an environmentalist, I typically, my instinct is to reuse things, right? Is to hand me down things, and this is one area where with many products that's not such a hot idea. So so there's no question that baby bottles, for instance, plastic baby bottles that you would buy now are going to be made with safer plastic than they were made with 5 or 10 years ago. Sippy cups, same thing. If I had a baby, my kids are a little bit older now, but if I had a baby now, one product that I would probably blow a little bit of money on, because of the very clear evidence that toxic chemicals are transmitted to the baby through the product, and that's crib mattresses. I would blow a little bit of money on a non-toxic organic crib mattress, because your baby is lying face down in that thing for hours every day, breathing in whatever off-gassing is coming off that product, right?
There was this
So
weird study, and I'm since you're the scientist, you're going to tell me when and where this was. I remember I was sitting in a doctor's office and reading like a ladies' home journal, and this was probably like 10 years ago, and read something about sudden infant death syndrome in fans, and that children that had fans in the room were less likely to die of SIDS than children that did not have fans in the rooms. And now that I am here, 10 years later, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
well, it's those chemicals being emitted from, the furniture and the mattress, or at least I think it is. So what do you think?
I don't know about that. I haven't seen any. I haven't seen any studies linking SIDS to toxic chemicals. But a couple of minutes ago, you asked me what the difference is between the public reaction to our first book, Slow Death by Rubber Duck, and the public reaction to our second book that just came out, Toxin Toxout. And, massively increased public awareness of these issues. Most young parents, for instance, most moms, very aware of these toxic chemicals in products. And the other piece of good news, and this makes it a lot easier for us as consumers, the other piece of good news is that a lot of companies are getting with the program. So you have big consumer product companies now like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Avon, trying to get a lot of these toxic chemicals out of their product lines, in the case of those companies, cosmetics. You have big retailers, Target, Walmart, trying to get a lot of these toxic chemicals out of their house brands. So just in the last few years, in fact, in the case of these cosmetics companies, just in the last few months, you see a lot of these companies now coming forward saying, you know what, we can make our products without these toxic chemicals. We're going to try to reformulate because we think it's in the best interest of our consumers.
Absolutely. Those kind of companies can't stand us. We're like a thorn in their side because we're teaching the average woman, American mom, what these things are and the dangers behind them. And those companies are starting to lose some money. So I'm going to go to a couple of comments here that we have in the chat room, and then I'm going to give you the final word, Rick. But here we go. So let's see. Okay, so Kim says to me, I'm glad to know how fast toxins, pesticides leave with organic food. And absolutely, yes, that means, Kim, you have far more control over your life and your health than you ever thought possible. I think it's fantastic as well. We also went to Elizabeth in her Teflon comment. Pam Gordon, I love this. She said, don't mess with my fire inspector investigator hubby. Absolutely. Do not mess with those firemen. I'm right there with you. And then there was something else that someone said a little while ago that I was just like laughing my butt off about. And it was something about one of those choice comments that I had. Let me see. Irony. Fun. It was a choice comment that I made. Poor Rick was turning bright red. He had no idea what he was getting into. And I'm trying to remember. The comment was something about Leah in my mouth and me talking about having sex with my husband. Rick, you're going to think that this is funny. It's not funny. This is absolutely as serious as it can be because I teach women do not nag your husbands about this stuff, because what typically happens in a family situation is the moms are the first one to get this information, and they're like, oh my God! And they want to change everything. And they go to their husband, and their husband is just like, oh dear. And then the eyes start rolling, and then the mom gets annoyed that she's not taken seriously, okay? And then that's where the situation happens. Do you nag him constantly, or do you just encourage him, right? And my solution is always, 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 always encourage him. And there's two things that men love. Well, three things. They love beer, they love sex, and they love food, okay? Right. So focus on those three things as much as you can, and, give them something that makes them happy, and give it to him more when he does good things, just like a good little puppy dog. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. So when I
should you be revealing your secrets to me?
No, because I'm not married to you, so it's no big deal. But I should talk to your wife and say, if you want Rick to do anything, I know the secrets. I don't know if you're a beer man, but, they might be a sport man or whatever. But it's usually sex and it's usually food, okay? And those two things, if you want your husband to do anything, you can encourage him with those two things, right? And the sex sometimes is a little bit more than the food. I'm serious. It took me like 8 long years to get my husband from eating Del Taco every day, and you think I'm joking, I am not, getting him to eat Del Taco every day to eating organic and liking it and working out and liking it. The guy has a six-pack now, and he's doing everything, almost everything that I'm doing. And it took 8 long years, but I did not nag him. I did not nag him because I was smarter than that. So ladies, be smart. Be smart and use that one thing that you have. The one thing that you have that you know he wants. And as you're listening to Rick, okay, even though I'm probably making him turn bright red, but that's okay because, you know, he's on my show. He should have known what he got himself into, but that's okay. Remember, what Rick is telling you is true. Take it home. Listen, take it in. Go buy his book. So how do we find out about your book again? Rick, tell me a little bit about how the ladies at home are going to get your book.
It's called Toxin Toxout, Getting Harmful Chemicals Out of Our Bodies and Our World, and it's available on Amazon.com or in fine bookstores everywhere. So,
I like that. Find bookstores everywhere. Read the book, and then don't nag your husband, okay? Do something else and make it worth his while, you know? Totally make it worth his while. My husband now has natural toothpaste, natural shampoo and conditioner, although it's really hard to find a good shampoo and conditioner when you go natural. I got to tell you, guys got to like try those personal care products and figure out what works for you because some of them are just crazy. You know, he's eating organic food. He's cooking from scratch when he's cooking. I mean, the only thing he's still doing is charring the barbecue. That's pretty much like as bad as it gets. And I think he has a couple of other things that I can't remember off the top of my head. But we even switched his beer. We even switched his beer from Corona to Heineken, and that right there was that was a man thing. Because when the Food Babe did this whole thing, this expose on beers, and she found all the ones that had additives and all kinds of crazy stuff in it, and there was very few that didn't. But the ones that didn't, one of them was Heineken, and then I think it was like Sierra Nevada and Heineken, and of course it's Heineken. Because it's from Holland. And I remember what the Dutch were like when I was over there. I didn't mess with them with that kind of stuff. So they do drugs, but they take it very seriously, and they don't put pesticides on them and stuff like that.
It's all natural.
It's all natural. It's all natural. It's all natural. Although I could tell you this one story about, you know, the first time I went to Amsterdam and I got in the taxi cab and the guy was on something, and it's not the kind where he was like, yo, dude. It was kind of, he was twitching like this. I was scared the entire time. So I don't think that was pot. I think that was definitely an upper, and you know that happens in Amsterdam. So, but anyways, I'm gonna give you the final word, Rick, because you've got so much to say, and just because I like having you by. So you got to come when you do another book, or if you want to just come stop by again just to poke your head in, you know, we would totally let you in, no problem.
Excellent. So here's my final message is this. Yes, we're surrounded by these toxic chemicals. Yes, they have a damaging effect on our health, but all is not lost. And what we've shown in our book through this kind of crazy direct experimentation on ourselves is that being a more careful consumer helps. It can dramatically lower toxic chemical levels in your body, sometimes within a matter of hours. So eating organic food really helps. Buying greener, less toxic personal care products dramatically lowers your levels of phthalates and parabens. Buying low VOC paints and carpeting, very common to find low VOC products these days. That can really help reduce your toxic chemical levels. So in our book, Toxin Toxout, we've got the whole book boils down to a top 10 list. The top 10 things that you can do to reduce toxic chemical levels in your life and in your kids' lives, and your health will thank you for it.
I absolutely love that. If you guys see in the chat room, we also have Elizabeth's putting down the links where you can find Toxin Toxout on Amazon. They want to know, is there a Kindle version?
Yes, there's an electronic version.
Ah, see you guys, ding, ding, ding. There's also a Kindle version to the book. So I recommend you guys all get this. Let's support Rick and what he's doing so that he continues to do what he's doing up in Toronto, where everyone says A and apologizes. And we love our Canadians. And thank you so much, Rick.
I don't think I've apologized once.
I did make you turn bright red. I did get you to turn bright red.
That's true. And I don't maybe I'll get in one last A here at the end, just to, you know.
Are you going to say it?
Fulfill the... Nice to see you. Nice to see you, A. Yeah. How's that?
That's awesome. Canadians are awesome. All right, and then Rick, we got to get you down at our conference when we have it again. I didn't even know about you this year, but we got to get you to come down and hang out with the bloggers, the green bloggers. I'm doing the first
Sounds good.
green blogger conference, so we'll have to, yeah. I'm bringing some
Okay.
Canadians, not all of them, but we'll reach out to you. So thanks so much for coming by, everybody. Don't forget about the Toxin Toxout with Rick Smith. We'll see you next week. Give Elizabeth a shout out and tell her congratulations, she made it through her first show, and yo, it's awesome with her new platinum hairdo. And I love y'all, and we'll see you later. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.